young, unemployed, and angry. Deadly protests spiral out of control in Iraq as demonstrators demand a complete political overhaul. The Prime Minister promises real change, but is it enough to end the unrest? I'm Imran Garta, and today's newsmakers are the anti-government protesters in Iraq. The death toll stands at more than 100. The number of wounded is well into the thousands. But protesters in Iraq remain defiant. 2 years after the defeat of Daesh, rampant corruption, high unemployment, and poor public services still plague the country. Many Iraqis say they've had enough and are calling for a change in government. The Prime Minister has been in office for less than a year, and this unrest poses a major challenge to his rule. And the protests are backed by some serious political and religious heavyweights. Iraq's top Shia leader has criticized Baghdad for failing to eradicate corruption and urged security forces to show restraint. The Prime Minister has pledged a series of reforms. But will the thousands on the streets trust him to keep his promises? Adam Pletz takes a look.
More than 100 people have been killed in protests in Baghdad and other Iraqi cities over the last week. Protesters say they're outraged by corruption, unemployment, and the government's inability to provide basic services. Officials accuse malicious forces of inciting violence. But security forces admit they used live fire and excessive force in an attempt to quell the demonstrations.
The number of injured is 6,107 and the number of dead is 104. These numbers include security forces, civilians and protesters.
8 of those killed were from the security forces. The government imposed a curfew and cut internet access, but the protesters have pushed Prime Minister Adil Abdul Mahdi to make concessions.
ولدينا مشروع سنقدمه خلال الفترة القصيرة القادمة إلى مجلس الوزراء لمنح راتب لكل عائلة لا تمتلك دخلاً كافياً بحيث نوفر حداً أدنى للدخل يضمن لكل عائلة عراقية العيش بكرامة وأن لا نبقي أحداً خلفنا أو تحت خط الفقر.
Abdul Mahdi has offered to meet demonstrators without an armed escort and listen to what he described as their righteous demands. But that hasn't quelled calls for him to resign. The protests have not been linked to any party or religious group.
In this revolution, we are all one people, not a million different ones. Just one people. No one represents us. Those who go to the parliament wearing suits in order to represent us don't represent us. We don't want parties. If 100 of us die, next time we will be 1 million.
Protesters have directly attacked symbols of the political system. They've set fire to nearly 60 public and political party buildings. But the economy and job prospects are the main point of contention. The World Bank estimates that youth unemployment may be as high as 25%.
I have a master's degree, but the government would not even hire me as a street sweeper. All these young people are being treated unfairly.
Influential cleric Muqtada al-Sadr has thrown his weight behind the demonstrators, backing their call for the Prime Minister's resignation and for new elections. With the pressure building, will Prime Minister Abdul Mahdi's concessions be enough to satisfy the protesters, or are his days in office numbered? Adam Pletz, The Newsmakers.
Well, let's go to Baghdad now, where we're joined by Ahmed Rushdi. He's a senior foreign policy advisor to the Iraqi parliament. Ali Mamouri is a political science lecturer at the University of Sydney and the editor of Al Monitor's Iraq Pulse Desk. And here with me in the studio is Kadhim al Waeli, who was a senior advisor to the US-led coalition against Daesh. Gentlemen, good to have you all on the program. Kadhim, let's start with you. Has this been a long time coming?
Yes, we expected that. This one, it's unique because it hasn't been ideologized. There is no ideology behind it. There is no leader behind it. There is no agenda behind it. It started with basic demand. They want a job. They want to have a basic or essential life services. But right now, it's escalating. The demand escalating to changing the regime. We know the Iraqi governmental system or political system, it's a consensual government. It doesn't mean there is one person you can talk to. There is no one person who has the full responsibility or who can carry the responsibility. There is a political parties. They bring consensual government and compromise figure to be part of the government and lead that government. Right now, I feel that the protesters, now they passed the demand of, okay, we want water or electricity or we need a job. No, we need to change the whole system because that system, it's a chaotic system. And it needs to be, for them, they need to have a presidential system, just like other nations, other democratic nations.
I see. So Ahmed Rushdi, did it hit that point, if Kadhim is correct, where the people can't really be placated? Did it hit that point because 100 people are dead and 6,000 are injured, where they don't really want to negotiate anymore? They're talking about bigger things. They want the whole system to go.
Well, honestly speaking, it's not an easy task that you can change the whole system in a way or another. It's built up in 2003, and until now there is, in a way or another, it's the system that already Iraq maneuvering all those things, all those mechanical structures that are already in the bureaucratic system of the whole state. But the most important thing is that it is a huge message to the government. It's a huge message to the parliament. Is that the poor people, actually the poor people who are didn't manage to have any ideology, didn't manage to have any political agenda, just went to the streets, say, we are fed up. We cannot stand anymore all those difficulties that in our life, especially in the southern governorates and also in Baghdad. In a way or another, I think it's supposed to be the parliament and also the government. They understood really the message. They understood that if it will happen again, it will be disaster for the whole of the state of Iraq. And at the end, all the demands, it's supposed to be managed by the government as an executive arm of the state. And also, which is, I think, the most important thing, is that the parliament and the head of the parliament, the speaker of the parliament, Mr. Halbousi, actually met members of the demonstrators, and he actually managed to say is that, okay, the parliament has also a role with the executive arm of the state, is that to save the state from corruption, from all those deteriorators factors that it will devastate and destroy the state at the end. So I think at the end it's a huge message. All the politicians now, or the Iraqi politicians, actually receive it well, and I think it will change something.
Right, yeah. The speaker, Sadr, and others all throwing their weight behind the protesters, at the very least saying the protesters have legitimate grievances. One of my great regrets in the build-up to the show is that I wanted to get somebody on the ground, on the streets, a protester, to ask them, what do you want? What are your grievances? Something that made it hard for us. Yes, there's curfew in Baghdad and Nasiriyah and so on, but also the government's choking the internet, right? So it's hard for us to get hold of people on Twitter and elsewhere. Be that as it may, Ali Mamouri, the fact that the government is trying to put a lid on this right now and trying to say, hey, we'll meet with you, we'll talk with you. The Prime Minister saying, I won't have my bodyguards, I won't have any arms, I'll come and talk to you. Is that going to be enough to take the sting out of this, at least for the time being?
Of course not. Look, the protesters mostly are young people under 20 years old. Many of them are teenagers. They are very angry, they are desperate, and they've been participating in the protests since 2011. And each time at the end of protest, they hear the same promises, the same exactly promises. We're gonna have 100 days plan, and we're gonna fix the electricity. We're gonna provide you with jobs. We're gonna provide you with lands and homes and etc. But nothing happened. This time they are very angry, especially that from the first time the government failed to deal with them respectfully and with wisdom. From the beginning, they used force with very high escalate of force. Until now, we have more than 120 death toll and about 6,000 injuries among the protesters. And the government yet failed also to stop the unknown military forces targeting the people. We have snipers in the top of buildings shooting people, and no one knows who are they.
Right.
Even the government admitted, but they can't stop it. How the people can trust this government of fulfilling the promises when they are unable to stop the militias that are targeting the protesters right now?
Right. Kadhim, we have even the Prime Minister acknowledging the reports of snipers, but not sort of saying who's behind them and so on. At least one segment of these protesters is protesting Iran and Iranian influence, right? From their banners and their support of the General Abdul Saadi and so on. That's at least one segment. How much of it is connected to the whole? Or is it that some are protesting about the economy, some are protesting about Iran, and they both have a mutual gripe against the government? Can we actually determine that?
It's accumulated. Everything came together and sparked the demonstrations, the relief of Abdul Saadi, Lieutenant General Abdul Saadi, but then accumulated. And it started as we need essential services, we need job. But here's the thing, the Iraqi government, in the past 16 years, they've never thought about creating job opportunities for these youth. For example, I mean, right now, everyone relying on the government to have a job in the government. Well, it's a government. It's not going to employ all the Iraqis.
Well, I mean, Saddam did that.
Well, Saddam, he did everything. He can do everything whatever he wants. But now we're in democratic society, democratic regime, democratic nation. And I think they should open the investment opportunities, bring investors from the rest of the world, build something.
Is it corrupt? I mean, if there's all this oil wealth, and there's a democracy, and there's all these opportunities, are just a few people enriching themselves. Are the people right in claiming that the government is corrupt?
Corruption become part of the culture. The corruption, eating the government alive, eating the whole regime in Iraq alive. People encourage others to be corrupted. They encourage them. They bless the corrupted people. If you need something to go smoothly, you have to pay off somebody. And it become a cultural. That's the other thing. We need to really educate the people, the Iraqi people and the politicians. Look, you have a salary. You make money. Why do you have to be corrupt? I mean, yes, this is romance. You know, it's a romantic. But I mean, in reality, you can really fix and change the whole society. But first, you need to fix the governmental system. And right now, I mean, everyone trying to hijack the demonstrations. Everyone. Muqtada Sadr wants to lead it, just like in 2015. Mr. Halbousi met with representative of the demonstrations. I don't get it. I mean, did he went outside? Did he go to Basra or Nasriya or Diwaniyah, pick up some guys? Hey, let's meet. Or these guys.
And Kadhim, when someone like Khamenei says Iran and Iraq are two nations whose hearts and souls are tied together through faith in God and love for Imam Hussein and the progeny of the Prophet, this bond will grow stronger day by day. Enemies seek to sow discord, but they failed and their conspiracy won't be effective. Is that Iran trying to hijack it?
Absolutely. Iran would like to hijack everything. Iran, they want to jump into anything to get some credit. They want to control it. And when he say Iraq, and Iraq is not just Iraq, not the Shia Iraq. Iraq not just Karbala and Najaf. Iraq, Baquba, Iraq, Fallujah, Arbil. These, I mean, half of the Iraqis are not Shia, let's put it this way. And they don't believe in this religious or faith solidarity between Iraqi Shia and Iranian Shia. And Iran, yes, they want to hijack everything. I mean, Grand Ayatollah Khamenei, he lives in the past, I don't know, probably the 70s and the 60s. I mean, now this new generation of Iraqis and these guys who were born in the millennium, in 1999, they're trying to change something.
Ahmed Rushdi, what's your message to the Iranians?
Well, I think I agreed with our friend in the studio 100% in the matter of it is accumulated. It started with the resignation of the Minister of Health, then demonstration of the postgraduate individuals, Iraqis, men and women that have certificate, PhD, MSc, and so on. Then the demonstration against the transfer of General Abdul Saadi. Then demonstration happened in Mosul because of the statue of Abdul Wahab has been removed. Then it blast in the face of the government on Tuesday. Now, those accumulated events can be measured. Financially speaking, is that Iraq actually has a deficit now in about $18 billion, which will be doubled in 2020. So we have a real financial issues that all those demands can be happen or can be occurred by or can be done by the government gradually. It cannot be happen on one date, or let's say, or it can be at once. For the Iranian issue, let's agree on something very important, is that Iran has an embargo, has a sanctions, economical sanctions, and so on. So I think it's what's happened, it's maybe a test, the first test about the presence, the influence of Iran inside Iraq. Maybe next time it will be different because of the financial blockage, or the economical sanctions have been actually devastated and destroyed the Iranian economy in a way or another. That's why Iraq is a lung for Iran in a way or another. And also because of the Iraq has a deficit and also has a financial problems, and also has some sort of impairment in the oil issue and so on. So also there is another problem about what's happening on the Iraqi economy. And let us not forget, the Prime Minister went to China. He made an agreement, and it's supposed to be a huge agreement, strategic one, about binding Iraq with China on an economical base, which means also
so it's trying to prop up the economy.
It will be a problem for the Americans and the West to understand exactly what's happening in Iraq.
Right. Mr. Rushdi, you said that you agree with Kadhim when he diagnosed the problem, right? And fundamentally, he said that everybody is corrupt and there's a culture of corruption. You're a senior government advisor. Do you tell them the truth? Do you tell Iraqi parliamentarians and others, listen, you guys are rotten, you guys are corrupt, you're thieves?
Yeah, definitely. Well, sir, it's something obvious. You cannot just cover it. You cannot just say there is no corruption in Iraq. It's obvious. It's the problem, the huge problem that Mr. Halbousi said, is that we have wells of corruption. It's not only corrupted persons. So that means we have mobs, we have mafias, and we have all those things that at the end destroyed the Iraqi economy. And not only that, it's infiltrating in the cultural issue also. We all know that as Iraqis, if you want to make something, if you want to obtain something from the Iraqi government, or let's say from the bureaucratic structure of the government, you should pay in a way or another. And that's why it's a huge problem. It needs to be managed. It needs to be destroyed. It's a parallel structure of the bureaucratic structure of the state. It's the corruption structure. So you have two structures in the government, and it's supposed to be the Prime Minister do his best to try to destroy this the new structure that have been built in this 14 years.
Right, and I appreciate how frank you are about that whole thing. Ali Mamouri, when I was looking at some of the images of the protests and reading about some of it, what was interesting is the perception of the green zone by a lot of the protesters. It reminded me a little bit of that movie Elysium with Matt Damon, where there's this little, planet, if you like, which is special for the elite, protected, and the ordinary people can't go in there. Is that what has essentially become of Iraq and Baghdad? The green zone, everything for everyone, and the rest of the people have to fend for themselves?
This is exactly what the protesters are feeling. They are, green zone is like a symbol for them that represent all the political parties came after 2003, hungry for power, hungry for influence, hungry for money, and they overcame everything, and they controlled everything, dominated everything in the political space, in the public space, and they didn't left anything for the majority of the people. So if you want to find a job, you have to be affiliated with a political party. If you want to get a scholarship, you have to be a member of a specific political party. The parties are fighting in the media, but behind the scene, they are sitting around the table and sharing all the cake together. Even the parties that represent themselves as opposition, like Muqtada said, when he comes to the sharing the government, he take his share. He take his ministries, he takes his blocks in the parliament and his members in other directories and governmental space. But when it comes to the protest, he come and try to protest with them. But this time, the protesters are aware of this trick. This time, Muqtada Saad tried several times to send delegation to the protesters and try to find a way to control the protests, but the protesters didn't welcome him at all. They are angry about all the political parties, feeling that they are losing everything. They are exactly outside of the world of the green zone and the political parties altogether.
Right. And Kadhim, straight up your alley, did the Americans drop the ball here by focusing only on security? So when you have this existential threat of Daesh, the Americans are saying, okay, go and smash up Daesh, go and smash up ISIS, we'll give you whatever support you need, air support and so on. Did they miss the fact that there was all this corruption and economic mismanagement that was building up alongside that?
Now the Americans recused themselves from Iraq. They're trying to stay away from Iraqi affairs. Yes, they are focusing on the security agenda, but the Americans, they mismanaged the situation in Iraq 2003. I was part of the process, I have to admit it. They brought some arrogant element from Washington, D.C. to run this country with different mood, different agenda, different religion, everything different in Iraq than America. And that mismanagement, it's payback right now. Yes, right now they're focusing on the security, military process. They're staying away from the political.
Is it good that they're staying away?
It's good and bad. It's good. Well, it's them if you do, them if you don't. If they stay away, the Iraqis say, hey, you abandoned us, you neglected us, come back, help us. If they interfere with the Iraqi process, then the Iraqis say, hey, death to America, we don't want you to be here occupiers. And now the Americans, they're just trying to recuse themselves and stay away from, and it's good. Let the Iraqis fix it themselves. Let the Iraqis stir in the water and see what they're going to get out of it. And I think this is good. Even these demonstrations and protests, this is great thing going to happen to Iraq future, because now it's a wake up.
But the security forces are shooting them dead. That's the problem.
I know. God bless the protesters. But here's the thing. This is it's a wake up call for the Iraqis. This the new generation of Iraqis, they're not going to shut their mouth. They're not going to just let it go. They're going to be on the street and they're going to face their destiny
until the Prime Minister resigns?
It doesn't matter. See, the Prime Minister is the mini-me, Dr. Evil behind him. You watch the Austin Powers, okay? So the Prime Minister, we had 5 men.
Who's Dr. Evil?
A lot of them. Whoever brought him in Iraq. And this is the consensual process. He's a compromise. They brought Malik as a compromise, Ja'fari as a compromise, Abadi as a compromise. Now Abdul Mahdi. Abdul Mahdi will go away. But the other guys, Muqtada Sadr will still there, Ammar al-Hakim was still there, Nujayfi was still there. And these guys are the kingsmakers, and they will not let it go. They will keep this political, chaotic process going on. That's how they benefit out of it.
Ahmed Rushdi, what's your message to those young people who are risking their lives out on the streets asking for a better life?
Well, I will say to them, it's your right to say to the government, that's it, we're fed up. It's your right to say to the parliament, is that you are our voices, that it's supposed to be heard by the government. But the most important thing is that always look for the substitution. Don't go for the chaotic situation. At the end, it's our country, At the end, we are all Iraqis. We don't want to enter a tunnel without a light at the end.
And Ali Mamouri, is it going to get worse before it gets better?
I'm actually very afraid of the situation because at the same time that I respect the protesters' demands, but I can see very clearly that they are very dangerous forces. They are young. They don't have any agenda. They don't know what are they doing. They feel humiliated internally and externally in terms of internal policies and external policies. They see their country is out of control. Anyone comes inside at whatever they want to do. We have Israel bombing the PMU bases. We have Iranian in Iraq. We have Turkey bases in the north, and etc. They don't know what are they doing exactly, and no one can control them. No one can deal with them exactly. The problem is that the future is very unclear, and the last thing that I can mention, we are witnessing the replacement of the state with militias. Okay. Even the Iraqi force now
Ali, I've got to jump in here.
The militia.
Ali, I've got to jump in here because we're out of time, but it's been a pleasure talking to all of you. Kadhim al Waeli, Ahmed Rushdi, and Ali Mamouri. I thank you all for joining us here on the Newsmakers. Bye-bye.